Thank you so much for coming. We've called this press conference today, and we welcome certainly the Premier and the President of the BTUC, Mr. Wilkinson, and the Vice President, Mr. Chris Ferbert, and the Director of Human Resources. My name is Judith Holbein, and I'm the Assistant Cabinet Secretary, Deputy Head of the Civil Service. We're here today to give you the results of a recent Memorandum of Understanding, which has been signed on behalf of all public officers. This particular set of negotiations was I'm trying not to say an interesting one, but it was a different one. Interesting one, then. I'll use that adjective. In that, because of the current economic climate and the current debt that the government has, it was thought advisable that we enter into this set of negotiations in a different way than we have in the past. By nature, sometimes the negotiation process is adversarial. We entered into this not in an adversarial way at all. We entered as colleagues, trying to find a way to assist the government out of this current deficit position. So we met with the Bermuda Trade Union Congress early in April, and we asked them to agree to attack this particular issue in a different way, attack it by the BTUC representing all of the unions who represent government employees. At that time, we had 7 unions who represent the over 6,000 government employees. The Association of School Principals have now joined the BPSU, so we now had 6 unions. So we met in discussions in April, and thankfully the BTUC agreed that we would do this process in this manner. And the first meeting was held in this process was held in the beginning of June, and I'm pleased to say that by the 26th of June, we had signed the Memorandum of Understanding. Before we did that, it was thought advisable for the Ministry of Finance to meet with the membership of all of the unions, and the Ministry of Finance did that, just to explain the current economic climate and government's current economic position. We're going to tell you in a moment the contents of the Memorandum of Understanding. So we met, as I said, and we reached an agreement. And we signed the MOU on the 26th. The unions that were represented were the Bermuda Industrial Union, the Bermuda Public Services Association, the Bermuda Police Association, the Bermuda Union of Teachers, the Fire Services Association, and the Prison Officers Association. And during the process, the BTUC agreed to assist the employer, the government, by helping to reduce the current deficit through cost-cutting measures. And that's what we discussed. Rather than a negotiation, we didn't go into all of the nitty-gritty of the current contracts. We talked about current cost-cutting measures. And we agreed 5 things that we thought could assist. And we're going to divide that up. I'm going to tell you about a couple, and Mr. Ferbert and Mr. Wilkinson on behalf of the union will tell you about a couple. And the Premier will have some closing remarks in terms of the whole process. Now, I'm going to talk about early retirement, yes? Mm-hmm. Okay. The first of the 5, we offered an early retirement incentive program. Anyone age 60 to 64 who can retire under either the Pensions Act or the Public Service Superannuation Act, or anyone who can retire under the Superannuation Act who are in the uniformed services such as police, or corrections, I keep saying prisons, but Department of Corrections, may apply to retire early. As an incentive to their retirement, we offered a 6 months pay incentive. It's a one-off offer. It will not go on forever. The agreement really is for a 2-year period, so it's a one-off offer. And if you decide and you're in that age bracket of 60 to 64, because the mandatory retirement age is 65, so we stopped it at 64. And you want to go now, you would be offered it. The main thing is that the post cannot be filled for 2 years in order for us to have some cost savings. I have to just stress back a minute. One of the overall things that we agreed with this 5-point package is that at the present time, government is not considering making anybody redundant or to lay anyone off. And I couldn't guarantee that that will be forever. It all depends on how the economy goes. It all depends on a number of things. But I did agree that if it comes up that someone is going to be made redundant, I would go back to the union and we would consult. And the union accepted that proposal. So the early retirement is the first one. that we agreed. Mr. Furby?
You want to do them in order?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and to the Honorable Premier. As Ms. Bean said, this was a very unusual set of negotiations. One of the second point that was agreed to was this whole issue of each worker that works for the Bermuda government giving up 1 day. And we call that a furlough day, 1 day of the month for 12 months out of the year. And that represents significant savings for the government. I think we worked it out to be somewhere between $20 to $22 million in savings for the government. Recognizing that you're talking about each of those 6,000 staff members that Ms. Bean spoke about, each one they're giving up at least 1 day's pay, like I said, for 12 months out of the year. And it's basically over the period of time of the memorandum of understanding. And let me just clarify one thing: the MOU was signed on Monday, which was the 22nd of July. On the 22nd of June, we got tentative agreement that had to go back for the memberships to ratify or the unions, as well as for the government to ratify. Once all those ratifications took place, we drafted an MOU that was finally agreed to Monday evening at about 7:15. In addition to that, the unions have also agreed to take a wage freeze from 2011 to 2015. So you might say, well, we're past 2011, we're past 2012. Are these going to be retroactive? No. There are certain unions that didn't get any wage increases in 2011 and in 2012. We know that a couple of unions did get increases via the arbitration process. But certainly, it's our intention to make sure that until March 31st, 2015, no one will get an increase between now and then. And we believe, and even though the government says they can't quantify whether if it was going to give you a 1 or 2% increase, you can't quantify it. But I think we can, in some respect, put a dollar value to it, that if we were going to give the staff either 1 or 2% wage increase, it certainly would have cost the government some money. So that also helps to contribute to the savings on behalf of what our members is prepared to give the Bermuda government. The final point I think that needs to be clearly understood is that there is a non-compliance issue in the MOU. And the reason why that is there, and it's there for both parties. So I want to at least explain to the members of the media that basically the non-compliance, if either party, and this is what it says, should not adhere to the terms and conditions of the MOU, that the aggrieved party will request a meeting of the negotiating team and discuss the matter in its first instance. So the minute one of us have a problem, we're not just going to initially cancel the MOU. We're going to sit down and have some dialogue, and provided that either party can give an explanation as to what happened with the MOU, then we'll be, have some dialogue as to whether the MOU is going to be terminated or not. The final point under non-compliance, and this is a very important point, because this is going to, set the stage, because the MOU only lays out, as Ms. Bean said, lays out 5 points. We have collective bargaining agreements between all the unions and associations that we spoke about, so much so that the MOU does not replace or amend any existing collective bargaining agreements or conditions of work not covered in the MOU. We're making that crystal clear. So I don't want any head department think they can go ahead and interfere with another part of the agreement, when that's simply not the case, sir. We've made this MOU in good faith, and we expect that all parties are going to honor it in good faith.
There are 2 more parts of the 5-point agreement. The first one is the formulation of a tripartite economic forum, which will consist, we hope, of the government, the unions, members of the Chamber of Commerce, and members of the Employers' Council, so that we can advise the government on the way forward in terms of economics. The last part of it is that the union has asked the government to write a letter to private industries, such as the banks and the Belco, the insurance companies, places like that, and say, look, the government of Bermuda employees has taken a bit of a hit. It's not an outright reduction in salary, but it does amount to a 4.6% reduction in our whole pay package. Can you bear with them, and can you work with them in terms of any issues that arise as a result of the less money? In terms of taking the money, the 1 day a week, that's pretty easy with our computer system. The hard part will be for managers to manage it. And we don't expect for everybody to be off all 12 days, but we expect for the heads of department and the supervisors to manage the process. It will be a little difficult with people who work 24/7, and we accept it. We're working on that. It will be a little difficult with education, who stipulate that they must teach for 200 days, and we're working on that. But altogether, we're working together so that we can resolve any issues that are outstanding. And I'll now hand it over to the Honorable Premier.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. Fine. Go right ahead. Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr.
No, you're fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I can't say enough about what this really represents. Really and truly, it represents a reality check for Bermuda, an acceptance that everyone, all stakeholders, have a say in the future of this country. I think in the past, maybe we have tended to, perception-wise, believe that it's difficult to work with the unions. And I want to say that this is not the case that I have found during this process of looking for what is right for Bermuda. I can't say enough and thank the representatives, Sarah Allen and Mr. Ferbert, for the job that they have done in standing up for what they believe to be the right way forward. It was important during this process that we started out by talking together. So myself and the finance minister did have a conversation with all the stakeholders, with our government representatives, to really talk about what's best going forward and to try and come to grips or to terms with really where are we financially, where are we economically, and how can we move together through in this process of a better Bermuda. So I am very, very, very excited about this historic opportunity that we've had and for it to come to fruition and for us to be here. And so I want to say to Ms. Judith Holbein and your team, thank you so much for the work that you have put in. I know it seemed like it was a short period of time, but that goes to show that when we are working together, a lot can be accomplished in a very short period of time. That is not to say that we will not continue on to seek out opportunities where we can to find cost savings, and we will continue to work with the representatives and all stakeholders in a voice in how we move forward. But again, this really goes back to the message of everyone coming together and really talking about what is it that we do? How do we move forward? And how do we look out for the interest of the country as a whole? And so again, I'd like to say thank you. I commend both teams as they sat at the tables. This has been historic, and we move forward now as we look to revive this country economically and ensuring that everyone has a stakehold in the future. And one of the other things I wanted to mention also was, this government was not looking for layoffs. That was not the intent at all. We were really looking for a way forward and where we can cut cost. And I know that there are other areas that we can look at, and we'll continue to consult with the unions. But this truly, really is an exciting time for Bermuda, I believe. And I want to thank everyone who was involved. And thank you for Bermuda for listening to us this afternoon. Thank you.
I just want,
Yeah, sure. Let me just say that the BTUC, as Mrs. Holbein mentioned, was approached, and it actually was a historical event to actually bring all of these unions together. And we smiled amongst ourselves to say that we were not sure if the government may have realized what they were getting into with bringing all the unions together. But we can appreciate that in looking at all of the different collective bargaining agreements, that it was extremely difficult to try to find a way forward to produce these savings. But ultimately what we decided is that we wanted all government employees to be affected the same way. So that was a key point. And I just want to say, it's been a pleasure to be a part of the process, to sit across the table from government, and thanking again my colleagues for that process. It was a very memorable experience. Okay.